Hi, Ben Carpenter here. I'm going to talk to you about a very important topic, which is the link between exercise, dieting, body dysmorphia and eating disorders. Now, it's important to point out that for a lot of people, exercise and diet takes them from an unhealthy to a healthy population. i.e. if someone's obese and they diet or exercise and go into a normal weight range, they might find they have improved health. However, the other end of the spectrum are people who are dieting to very, very low percentage body fat, bodybuilders, fitness models, contest prep, etc., who will notice decreased health as a result of doing so. So, when I asked this on my Facebook page a few months ago whether people noticed symptoms of eating disorders, it was very, very split. A lot of people said they didn't think it was prevalent among the fitness industry, whereas other people said that they did notice symptoms of them doing this themselves. And the people who noticed that seemed to say that it was after doing bodybuilding shows, photo shoots, any form of contest prep, or essentially extreme dieting. Now, if you think about it, if you look at a lot of bodybuilding diets, they get more and more restrictive the deeper they go into contest prep. So I've genuinely heard cases of people saying they were only going to eat tuna out of the tin for 12 weeks. Now, that was a few years ago. I hope that times have evolved since then. But it is still very common for people to go on very, very restrictive diets where they've only got a small selection of food groups, i.e. egg whites, chicken, turkey, tuna, green veg, brown rice, porridge oats, etc. And keeping all of their meals revolved around that. So how many of you have seen photos where people are eating tilapia and broccoli 5 times a day? When you kind of think of it like that, suddenly eating disorders doesn't seem quite as extreme, because it does show you that a lot of people will present symptoms of eating disorders due to very, very restrictive diets. So I've touched on this briefly in 2 videos previously. One was flexible versus rigid dieting, which showed that flexible dieting was associated with a decreased risk of anxiety towards food. So it is possible that being on a rigid diet where you have certain food eliminations will increase your anxiety towards food, because there are foods that you are prohibited to eat, rather than you can eat them but in very small quantities or smaller quantities. The other one was a video called The Truth About Bread, which showed that with 2 groups, the group who were allowed to include bread in their diet had a lower rate of dietary transgressions. So these studies do seem to suggest that people that have to eliminate foods completely from their diet may find themselves more susceptible to anxiety towards food and perhaps binge eating when they do eat food they're not supposed to eat. It kind of triggers a binge. So it's important for me to specify that I'm not an eating disorder specialist. I'm not going to be giving advice. I'm simply presenting the facts, all the evidence, for you to be aware of, either for yourself, for your clients, for your loved ones, people you know who are dieting, etc., etc. Just be aware. That's all I'm asking. So I'm going to be reading from a tablet because I'm making sure I'm essentially picking direct quotes out of several studies. I apologise for the format, but it's quite a lot of text to go through, so I prefer to do this and get it accurate. So, first study. Biceps and body image. The relationship between muscularity and self-esteem, depression and eating disorder symptoms. So, findings suggest that contemporary American men display substantial body dissatisfaction, and that this dissatisfaction is closely associated with depression, measures of eating pathology, use of performance-enhancing substances, and low self-esteem. Muscle belittlement, believing that one is less muscular than he is, presented as an important construct in the body dissatisfaction of men. So muscle belittlement we can think of as, let's say, body dysmorphia. So how many of you train a lot, and the better your physique becomes, the more critical of your physique you are? I know that I'm guilty of this. So previously I wanted to, say, lose a little bit of fat, build a little bit of muscle. Then it gets more extreme where you want to be a certain weight or a certain body fat percentage. Then even at that point, you then look at yourself in the mirror and you think, I want to fine tune my deltoids or do this or do that. It's very, very common for people to get more and more critical of themselves the better shape they get into. So again, just be aware. I'm just saying be aware of any possible links. Make sure that you've got good psychological health, or as good as can be. Next study. Anorexia nervosa and reverse anorexia among 108 male bodybuilders. Reverse anorexia is described kind of how you would describe body dysmorphia. So their description was people who viewed themselves as small and weak, even though they were big and strong, essentially. So again, that kind of body dysmorphia. So reverse anorexic subjects reported they declined social invitations, refused to be seen at the beach, or wore heavy clothes even in the heat of summer because they feared that they looked too small. All 9 reverse anorexia cases occurred among steroid users. None occurred among non-users. So this is again presenting a link between people who have body dysmorphia with an increased likelihood of using steroids. This is a correlation causation kind of argument. You could say that people that are using steroids then were subject to heightened degree of body dysmorphia, or people with higher degrees of body dysmorphia were more likely to use steroids. It's hard to say which, so again, just presenting with the facts. So, next one. Body image, binge eating, and bulimia nervosa in male bodybuilders. For anyone who's unaware, bulimia nervosa, if I try to give a really oversimplified description, is an eating disorder which is often presented as people who will make themselves vomit after eating. That's an oversimplified description. So, high rates of weight and shape preoccupation, extreme body modification practices, binge eating, and bulimia nervosa were reported among male bodybuilders, especially those who competed. So competitive male bodybuilders have shown to have heightened degree of binge eating, bulimia nervosa, and extreme body modification practices. Competitive male bodybuilders reported higher rates of all of those compared with recreational male bodybuilders. So again, as people go to the extreme end of the spectrum, be aware of the increased likelihood towards bulimia, binge eating, and extreme body modification practices. Next study. Weight loss, psychological and nutritional patterns in competitive male bodybuilders. This is a very, very quick quote because I thought it was quite high impact. Between 30 and 50% reported psychological distress when preparing for a competition. Psychological distress includes anxiety, short temper, and anger. So again, as people are dieting for competitions, a heightened anxiety towards food, perhaps as more food elimination occurs. I'm just presenting that hypothesis, it's not in the study. So if you are someone who's dieting to an extreme, be aware of this and be aware of any unhealthy relationship towards food. Okay, next study. Got 2 left, almost there. So, entering bodybuilding competitions was associated with a 3.2 times higher muscle size dissatisfaction, i.e. body dysmorphia, and 4.8-fold increase in reported predisposition for health harmful muscle gain practices. So, body dysmorphia and people that will sacrifice their own health to achieve increased muscle size. However, being a bodybuilder was associated with 5.7 times higher predisposition for a health harmful practice. In conclusion, bodybuilders have lower muscle size satisfaction and significantly higher predisposition to health harmful muscle gain practices as compared to recreational gym users. So again, this is correlation or causation argument, the chicken and the egg. Are bodybuilders are they more likely to have a rate of body dysmorphia because of the sport, or are they turning to the sport because of existing body dysmorphia? It's very hard to kind of define between the two. And then final one, this is in females, just because I thought it'd bring a little bit of balance. So, study is menstrual function and eating behaviour in female recreational weightlifters and competitive bodybuilders. Significantly more weightlifters than control responded that they were terrified of becoming fat, were obsessed with food, had used laxatives for weight control, and claimed they had been anorexic in the past. Now, when I was looking through this research, there was a link between people who had been anorexic, who then were perhaps more likely to turn to bodybuilding. I don't want to hypothesize the reason to that. I'm not a psychiatrist or psychologist, but that's interesting to think that people that had suffered with eating disorder symptoms previously may find an increased predisposition to want to bodybuild. Perhaps it's the rigidity of it, or the fact that it's still very obsessive with diet, but going from one end of the spectrum, i.e. anorexia, to kind of bodybuilding physique, if you will, but again very, very extreme, so as lean as possible, as muscular as possible, etc. So that's my kind of presentation of the research. So there does seem to be very, very common links between body dysmorphia and eating disorder symptoms in bodybuilders. Now, this may be increased the more extreme someone goes, i.e. if someone's a competitive bodybuilder, they will have increased eating disorder symptoms, as well as an increased likelihood for anabolic steroids, or the other way around. So people that are less happy with their physique are more likely to turn to steroids, and then more likely to turn to competitive bodybuilding. It's hard to say which. But essentially what you need to be aware of is that extreme practices do often come with extreme psychological side effects. So if you are one of these people, like myself, who likes to diet to an extreme, to a very low percentage body fat, be aware of any kind of, let's say, negative psychological attitudes towards food or towards yourself. And this is perhaps presenting the importance of a clever post-diet strategy, i.e. when you've dieted towards a show, photo shoot, contest, whatever, it's very, very common for people to binge eat afterwards following a restrictive diet and put on a significant amount of weight. A lot of the time people will binge and their weight will rebound to a heavier weight than when they actually started their diet. Now, that is probably due to severe food restriction choices, which has kind of been outlined in the research. So just be aware of it, try and plan for it, and try and reintroduce foods or increase your caloric intake slowly. But what I'm trying to recommend to people is to be aware of psychological health. There is a certain extreme when people are dieting, and I will have sacrificed health to a certain point myself. I'm just saying be aware of it and try and make educated decisions. So I hope you found it helpful and useful. If you've got any questions, please ask me and post them on my Facebook page, which is facebook.com/Ben Carpenter Personal Training, or my Twitter page, which is BDC Carpenter. Thank you for watching. Bye.